Hello, everybody. Welcome. As we get started, perhaps you can use the chat and let us know where you guys are joining from. Everybody's super excited to pitch, so just give it another minute or two and then we can get started. As you're joining, let us know where you're joining from in the chat. Awesome. Let's kick off. So thank you guys so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Patricia Diaz. I am the Director of Partner and Founder Success here at Digital Undivided. Let me share my screen real quick. Awesome. So Digital Undivided is the leading nonprofit leveraging our data, programs, and advocacy to catalyze economic growth for Latina and Black women entrepreneurs and innovators. We are proud to support women of color entrepreneurs through our research, programs, and advocacy efforts. Our initiatives under each pillar reinforce our goal of creating a greater world where all women of color own their work and their worth. In today's session, we are doing a live pitch practice with Techstars and have 5 founders from our Digital Undivided community who will be pitching. Thank you so much to the Techstars NYC team for being here and providing feedback to these founders. Before I kick it off, I do want to share some event logistics. So each founder will have 3 minutes and also an extra 15 seconds, thanks to Tanaka, to pitch, and 7 to 10 minutes to receive feedback by the Techstars team. Tanaka and I will be keeping time to ensure everything runs smoothly and ends on time. Given that this will be a pitch and feedback session, there will be no audience questions, so please remain muted through the duration of the event. And with that, we can get started. So the first founder who will go up will be Dawn Robinson. I'll stop sharing my screen. Or you can start sharing.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. And my name is Dawn Robinson. I am CEO of Mellowscene, and we provide virtual reality music studios where musicians can collaborate, create, record, and monetize their art in the metaverse. And even before the pandemic, musicians had challenges getting together to create music. Before Mellowscene, there were only 2 choices: expensive in-studio collaboration or inexpensive, low-quality web-based apps. And you know, regular meetings are hard enough. Imagine trying to make music there. Our founder, Chad Gerber, a multi-platinum selling musician, realized there was another way to solve the essential need for musicians to collaborate in person without being in the same physical space. So he invented our patent-pending Scene Key, where musicians plug in their VR headset and instrument, and then they go into a virtual music studio. They can also invite other band members and musicians from anywhere in the world to join. Each musician uses their favorite digital audio workstation to create, sync and share files, and ends up with a professional grade recording. Our scene key retails for $800, and in addition to hardware sales, we expect healthy MRR and ARR from user subscriptions and virtual marketplace sales. There are other music collaboration tools out there, but none allow musicians to be in the same virtual space or use their own digital audio workstation. We're the only ones doing that. Now, BandLab went from 0 to 22.8 million users in 5 years, establishing the market with a very basic tool. There are 84 million music streamers who are spending $5 monthly, a total market value of $38.3 billion. To get the scene key into the hands of artists and influencers, we're establishing beta partnerships with Berklee College of Music, and Gibson Guitars has expressed interest in working with us. Additional go-to-market strategies include tutorials, product demos, and trade shows. Our team met over a decade ago, and we have almost 40 years of experience between us. We raised a friends and family round and debuted our alpha prototype at CES in January of this year. We're currently raising $3 million in a pre-seed round to further develop our beta prototype for testing and production in the first quarter of 2024. Meloscene is a game changer, providing access to studio quality collaboration for musicians at any level across the board. Do y'all want to see how it works? I got a sample. See if this works. Oh, okay, hold on. I'm going to do this. And here it is. And here we are.
Have no delays.
So this is a sample of the music studios, and Chad Gerber was in Los Angeles, and Voss was in
perfectly
Amsterdam.
play along with that on my end. It's crazy.
All right. I think we gave you a couple of more seconds, Dawn, but thank you so much for that pitch and introducing us into the world of music making in the metaverse. Super solid pitch. I'm not sure if Gary, you want to start on your end?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, great pitch. I had a few questions and comments. I mean, I guess the first comment is like great energy. It's like fun to listen to you. You're very energetic. So that's awesome, because the worst thing is if the pitch is boring, and you made sure it wasn't boring. And, you know, I always say if a founder doesn't have any energy about the pitch, then it's really hard for me to get enthusiastic. So that wasn't the problem. I think the questions I had were, like, I don't think at the beginning you actually introduced yourself, like who you were or what role you had in the company. I think like, at least I was taking notes, so I might have missed it, but you kind of said our founder is Chad Gerber. And so that immediately made me think of, well, who are you? And why are you pitching? And why is the founder not pitching? Are you a co-founder? It made it sound like you were an employee, which then automatically undermined your pitch, right? Because people like to hear pitches from founders and co-founders, not from random people on the team. Sorry if I say it that way. And so I think like you have to make sure that you establish that authority. And I didn't even really pay attention when you got to the HR slide towards the end, because again, you didn't really say who you were or anything like that. Second thought I had was in terms of, so team, that was the thing I thought about team. Like Chad seems like he's awesome. I'm not sure who you are, and I'm not sure why you're pitching instead of him. The second thing I thought was in terms of like when we get to scene key, you know, it's an interesting idea, but then I guess the question that people would ask is it a vitamin for musicians, or is it a painkiller, right? Because vitamins we can live without, painkillers we pay anything when the pain is painful enough, right? And so I think like there is.
And I noticed that's something that I do. Like,
Lauren,
nerd.
Yeah, thanks. So I think like, you know, one of the things that you want to think about is, I don't know that the metaverse has the same sort of like cultural cachet that it might have had before. I think you just kind of like jumped into it that like, oh, because it's in the metaverse, it's cool. Whereas now Facebook is cutting the budget. I forget which other company today cut its metaverse budget. I think that a lot of people think that the metaverse hasn't really taken off as it could have. So then the question would be, well, why couldn't we just have a musical collaboration tool that is not in the metaverse, that somehow otherwise, people are in their own homes and they can connect to it via their computer and make studio sounding music. So the second question I had was, why do we need the metaverse for this? Like, that seems like a lot of extra work and a lot of extra money, and it's not sure what the value added is, and you never actually tell us what that might be. And then I think the last bit I would say, and sorry, these aren't really questions, these are comments, but you can, respond if you want to, would be that if you're going to, so if I got it correctly, you've raised about $150,000, $80,000, something like that. It seems like you've built the tool, but you never tell us about traction, right? And then you automatically jump into, oh, but I want $3 million. Like, for investors, the main thing that they want to see is, okay, so you've built this MVP, because you're saying it's not even like a beta or a commercial beta, it's an MVP of some sort. You did a bunch of experiments. What were the results of the experiments? Did people actually use it? Do you have how many recordings were made? Were these recordings somehow successful in some way? Was there value actually created for the people that used it? And can you demonstrate that in any way by the fact that they came back often or they sold a lot of music? How do we know that this is value creation before we then give you $3 million for something that we don't know if it even works? So those are my kind of major comments. And I guess lastly, going back to the team a bit, so you've made this technology. It seems like it's patent pending, if I understood correctly. But I don't know who made it, because it doesn't look like, well, based on what you said, it doesn't sound like you're the techie. Again, I still don't even know what your real value or role in the company is. Chad looks like he's a musician. So who built the technology? Because if the technology is really going to be this major differentiating thing that we're going to build $1 billion business about, who made that? And is this person going to continue? Is this person going to make the beta version? Are they going to be the ones iterating consistently as we get more and more feedback from the market? Again, I don't know the answers to any of those questions. So sorry, a bunch of stuff I threw at you.
It's okay, but can I answer? Am I allowed to answer?
Of course.
Oh yeah, because it's 4 minutes. Okay, so I apologize, Gary. I introduced myself at the beginning. My name is Dawn Robinson, and I'm CEO of Meloscene. And then I said what we do, but I apologize that you missed that.
I totally missed it. I mean, I think sorry. I would just, at some point, if your narrative could be relevant to the, because I still would hold by the same point. It seems like Chad could be seen as like the heart. I don't know what the relationship between you and Chad is. Like, why is he the founder, but you're the CEO? So it still just gives me confusion. Establish some authority at the beginning as to why you are the person to lead this business. But sorry if I missed that at the beginning, but I would still kind of generally have the same comment.
Okay, and so musicians have issues getting together to collaborate. And the collaboration tools out there now, there's like one basic thing that they get to use. In our platform, they get to use whichever DAW that is their favorite. So they can use Pro Tools, they can use Fruity Loops. There's like 4 or 5 major ones that most people use, and they can all use them and be in that studio at the same time. Also, they can look at each other's digital audio workstations and then share and sync files at the same time. So it's a great creative and collaborative process that they cannot do now. It is even a much more efficient process than they even knew, because in the studio, not only is it more expensive and they have to wait their turn, but they also have, it doesn't happen like they're sharing things and they only get to go once. So with our tool, they get to go as many times as they need to and then drop those files, and then whoever's creating the song can create that. So it is not a vitamin. It is certainly a painkiller, because you are in New York and I'm here in LA, and you and I could have sync keys and meet in the same virtual room and make music together and see each other and talk to each other at the same time and make music. So there is definitely a differentiator. Chad is actually the technical founder. We have a hardware team that's working on, that has worked and that has been with us since our inception. And They have done several projects and they have music and metaverse background. So most of the people that we're working with now have a music and metaverse background, which is really insane considering that the metaverse hasn't really been around that long. So we've been very fortunate.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let Tanaka continue then.
Okay.
Well, congrats, Dawn, for being the first and for actually your excellent delivery. I think from a structural perspective, it had all the elements of what we like to see in good pitches, right? So you had the intro to the founder, you had the competitive landscape, you had the business model, you had the why are we doing this? But one area that I felt needed a little bit more explanation and kind of adding to Gary's point was the why now, because of this metaverse question. And I think the visual didn't necessarily convince me as well. So I think in the next iteration of the pitch, it would be awesome if you could add in why people would want to use this now, what data or observation or testing that you've done to show that people want to use this tool as part of their recording process, right? So the musician, like having those testimonials, those real life stories, I think that's going to be really key. And then also, I think in these last couple of minutes, you explained actually what the product is doing. And it wasn't clear to me in the beginning how this could help a musician. And I have a lot of like musician friends. I'm like, oh, well, they figure it out, they have their tools, they go for jam sessions, they figure it out virtually. But I think having some sort of visual element in your pitch where you say, this is the pain point, this is how this product is allowing people to have this meeting place where they could do X, Y, Z that they couldn't do in this other digital environment, but that the metaverse is facilitating. I think that's going to be important. And then more so from like an optics, just being really nitpicky here, thinking about the gray screen on the pitch. There was like a gray screen, I think as part of the text somewhere in the pitch deck. So just making sure that, if you are presenting the pitch deck and you want people to follow you along the pitch deck, making sure, the visuals are really, really tight. And also from a video perspective, making sure that's tight as well. And that you have like really compelling visuals, because this is an experience that's meant to be lived, in this meta world. So we want to be excited to be there and not feel like, oh, it's necessarily like an old school, let's say, film that we're entering, so to speak. So I'd say the visuals would be very key for you, and would love to see what you can do there. I'm sure you'll come up with something great. And I think my last comment, or rather two last comments, I thought the delivery was excellent, though it felt like you were reading the pitch. You were looking down maybe. I'm not sure if you had like assisted notes. And I try to encourage, as
yes,
many
I did.
Yeah, I try to encourage as many founders as possible to really connect, given that we are on Zoom, right? So you have this added layer, this added friction between us, and we want to like really see you and look at you. So the more you can do to avoid the pitch, the better for you. So I would encourage, practicing the pitch with the slide deck, without it, not reading it, and really owning, this company, because it is yours and it's not on the paper. Like it's all you and Chad and et cetera who's helping you build it. So that would be my feedback. And also just to Gary's point around the launch, when you said you raise a friends and family round, you launched at CES, my questions were, okay, and then what happened? So I think it's going to be really important, given that you did raise, to show what was the outcome of that raise besides going to CES and launching the product.
Awesome. And there's time.
And you can email us as well after at Techstars. We're happy to have a follow-on conversation.
Okay, good. Because I wanted to talk about
awesome.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, y'all.
Next up is our second founder, Janice Williams-Oliver with Miss T Wants to Know.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me try and share my screen here. Hopefully we'll have no complications. Okay, wait a minute. This has to go away. You are sharing screen. Okay, wait a minute. I need to do this. Okay. And I need to do this. Okay. Hi, my name is Janice, and I am founder and CEO of Misty Wants to Know Incorporated. When I found out that hair relaxers cause cancer, I decided to go natural. And when I went natural, I discovered that I needed to detangle my hair every single day. And the only tools that I had at my disposal were my fingers and a comb. And so as a result, I pulled out a great deal of hair. And when I went to the hair salon, the hairstylist said, you have to detangle your hair before you come to the salon, because I too only have my fingers or a comb, and it would take me hours to detangle your hair, and that would cause significant customer backup. The solution is the Misty Pro handheld steaming tool with its oil-filled pods, which releases an oily steam or softening formulation to detangle hair fast. Why now? Well, there are 3 reasons. One, I just mentioned to you that the hair relaxers cause cancer, but also over 60% of the United States, if not 60% of the world, does not have straight hair. And as a result, there are going to be a lot of people who will decide that they don't need a relaxer or don't want one because it's harmful. But also, there is no tool that is sold by the Dysons and the L'Oreals of the world that detangles or maintains textured hair. So what does this all mean? This means that we have a growing customer base that justifies addressing a need gap, which means launching the Misty Pro tool. The Misty Pro handheld steaming tool is the only handheld steaming tool that discharges a softening formulation or an oily steam and will be professional grade. So what is our sales strategy? Our sales strategy is that we're B2B2C and we're B2C. We're going to be selling to stylists. Stylists are going to be selling to consumers, and stylists are going to be making a commission. And we're selling our oil pods via subscription. We are going to be a $125 million business in 5 years, and we're going to be able to achieve that by selling to over 6,000 stylists. And why is that approachable? That is doable because we have a relationship with Maven, and Maven has access to over 50,000 stylists. We have a letter of intent, but we also have relationships with other entities that have access to hairstylists like Share, and Style C. Traction to date. Well, we've been able to prove that we can discharge the oily steam. We've completed our first prototype, which is using off-the-shelf materials. Again, we have the relationship with Maven. We filed our first non-provisional patent and our patent cooperation treaty application, and we are a Procter & Gamble Beauty WWD Media winner. I have an MBA from Kellogg. I have consumer packaged goods marketing experience. I also have on my team a former L'Oreal chemist, a VP of engineering that sold one of his startups to Dell. And I also have a very extensive external team. The product realization group tends to work with startups at Stanford University. I've raised $170,000 so far. My goal is $60,000. And I want to thank you so very much for listening to my pitch. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Janice.
Thank you.
Love the energy. I don't know, Gary, do you want to start? Do you want me to start? You know.
Yeah, happy to start. I mean, so Janice is right. Great
That's
pitch.
right.
Yeah. I think like, you know, kind of just to kind of make this educational, I thought like the part that I like the best is traction. I think for most people, as you're listening to pitches, you know, the key things are like, where are the numbers? Show me the money. So I think the fact that you have a slide called traction, sorry, GOT, we can hear you. Thanks. The fact that you have a slide called traction, I thought was pretty good. And the fact that your traction seemed interesting. I think what I didn't get from the traction slide though is how many people have used it. Has it actually solved their problems? Do they come back and use it? Any sort of information about the customer and the customer's interaction, that's real traction, because the other bits they're important. The patent pending stuff is useful. The letter of intent is useful. But the best thing is customer validation. And right now, it doesn't seem like we have that, or at least you haven't shared it. And I think like for all the startups that are going to pitch, like that's the only thing that people are really waiting to hear. Do you actually have customers that are using your product and that they find it interesting? And if so, are they willing to pay, and how much? Once we have that, then we have the basis of a business. Right? So I thought that was good, but you know, there were kind of a couple of questions there. The second thing is I really like the fact that you went into, well, why you? right? Because especially for an early stage company, if you're the one doing the pitch, I have to have conviction that even if it's a great idea, you're the right person to realize it. I usually like to think about it like, people pitch me that tennis is a great game. I'm like, no, I want to understand why you're Serena Williams, right? And why you're gonna win all of the Grand Slams. That's what I'm waiting to hear, not like why tennis is interesting. Like obviously it is interesting, right? And I think when you said like my MBA from Kellogg, I have this like L'Oreal chemist, I thought that was really, really good. Again, when you said I've raised 170,000 K, remember this is an investment pitch, and this was the same for the last one. The question that investors are trying to figure out is, so what did you do with that? Because I want to understand like what you're going to be able to do with my 600K if I give it to you, right? So I'm using your past ability to execute as a predictor of what you're going to be able to do if I give you more money, right? Because a startup is a bunch of journeys along a kind of longer path. And the question is, how did you do in step one? Okay, well, if step one did well, then let's go to step two. So make sure that you're telling me that story here. I was missing that a little bit. And then I guess the last thing I would say is, the hard part for your business is basically figuring out how to get scale really quickly. And so I love the fact that you talk about the letter of intent, because there are people who say there's a hardware element there that's going to be super complicated. Again, I don't even know if it works. What if it malfunctions, blah, 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 blah. This is made in China, whatever. So I think like help us to kind of understand a little bit better, like why acknowledge that these sorts of businesses may be seen to be less investable, not even because it's in health and beauty, but because there's a hardware physical element to it, and then help us understand how you've overcome that. So sometimes people will say, oh, well, we've already gotten it completely. We've gotten the unit cost down to like $1, and it's going to go down to 10 cents at scale, whatever the case may be. Like help us to understand that you understand that the scalability is limited when there's a physical product, and you've thought that through, and you have a plan as to how to overcome that. I don't know that people would generally think that a startup that is so early stage can be both B2C and B2B2C. Usually you go B2B2C so that you can get to B2C, right? Because B2C is expensive to be able to kind of like afford marketing, whether it's online or offline. It's generally too expensive for early stage companies. So when you go back to the idea that you're raising $600,000, how far is that really going to take you if you have to do B2C marketing? Not very far at all. And on top of it, you have to do product development, and you have to do all the other stuff that you have to do. So that doesn't seem very realistic. What people do B2B2C is because they say, well, if I can do a partnership with Maven or someone else, whatever, revenue share, whatever, that's a way for me to at least get a big enough beachhead so that eventually I can then go B2C. So I think that was the other thing I think you have to be careful about. I think that when minorities and women pitch, I think I'm going to be very clear about this. The main thing people are trying to figure out is, do you understand this as a business? Because as an investor,
Yes, I
I'm
do.
investing in a business.
That's
Do you
right.
understand how I'm going to make money in
Yes.
a short period of time? I think you're doing 80% of it, but focus a bit more on the numbers and on the business. Because I think it seems like you have something, but
Yes,
again,
I do.
I don't know that definitively because you haven't told me anything about users actually using it.
So can I comment for a second? First of all, thank you very much for your comments. I really appreciate it. We're pre-revenue. Hardware is, as you probably well know, is very challenging. And then we're also doing something very innovative as well, too. So the money that we have used so far has been able to prove the discharge of the oily steam, because as you know, oil and water don't mix. And we initially had engineers working with us, and it wasn't until we brought on the former L'Oreal chemist that we were able to actually discharge the oily steam. So you are correct. $600,000, quite frankly, is only going to get us to the point where we can create a shippable product. As I mentioned in my traction, we have created a prototype, which we are currently out getting feedback from hairstylists. But this is not, so again, we're pre-revenue. Now, concerning what you're saying about B2B and B2C, you're right. The B2B to C, we can do that with our relationships with Maven, for example, with our relationships with StyleSeed, but we can still do B2C because a major part of our go-to-market strategy, which I do have a very extensive go-to-market deck, is for us to go to use affiliate marketing. And using affiliate marketing, we're not going to be, I understand what you mean if you're talking about ads on Facebook, that is expensive, but if you do affiliate marketing, that makes it very doable.
I would say all of that sounds great. If you can embed a bit more of this in the pitch then, so that we can kind of, because again, like you don't want the investor to be like, okay, she hasn't thought about it. It's clear that you have thought about it. So I would say maybe you can go a little bit farther in the, so we're going to do B2B2C through these kind of partnerships, but we're going to do some affiliate marketing as well. And that's going to, because the real questions people are trying to figure out there is like, so what's the customer acquisition cost, right? Like if I give you $600,000, how many customers are you really going to be able to get?
But the thing about it is $600,000 only gets us to the point to a shippable tool. $600,000 does not get us to actually even shipping the tool. Again, this is hardware and it's innovative hardware. And so there are other things that have to take place because the prototype that we're using is off the shelf materials. When we can't use that to actually ship. Again, this is hardware. So, I couldn't use so $600,000, like I said, and I couldn't say what I'd need in its entirety because I've, gone through, I know that I can't say to investors that I want $2-3 million. They have to see, and you're correct, they have to see the stages that we go through.
So just one last thing.
2 minutes left.
Thank you. The real question then is how long does the $600,000 last? And what are the milestones that you're going to achieve after it, right? Because again, going back to the investor question, the question is, what's the valuation today? I'm going to give you $600,000. That's going to last you 18 months. And at the 18 months, you're going to be at the end of stage 2. And stage 2 is going to be a shippable product, or it's going to be 1,000 users, or what it's going to be. And then in my head, I'll figure out, okay, so what does the valuation of the company look like at that point? Does it go up dramatically or not? So that's why I said, think about it from the investor point of view. I'm trying to figure out where the money is.
I understand.
And how far my money's going to go. Sorry, I'll turn it over to Tanaka.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we only have 1 minute left, so I won't add too much more. I think Gary covered everything. I think for me, the things that stood out to me, Janice, and it was an excellent presentation in terms of you really leaning in to the aspect of your business that is very strong at this stage, given that you're pre-revenue, which is this team, right? So I would encourage, everyone, given where you are at, to make sure you emphasize the thing that you want us to think about, if not for the things that are still under development. So I thought you did a really excellent job there in highlighting the expertise of the team, and makes me feel confident that you can execute past prototype, which is very key at this stage. I think some questions that I had similar to Gary were one around the pricing model and business model, right? Do you want to start with both these business models up front, the annual pod subscription? I had some questions there. Would like to dive a little bit more to see, what kind of validation has been done into that particular form of doing things. But I think apart from that, my last question was around the raise. What are you going to do in the next phase, which you seem to have covered in the comments. But overall, very strong leadership team, but would love a little bit more tightening around the business model and also the market opportunity. I think you mentioned it was 60%. You were focusing on the 60% of US women, but I think the curly population is larger. So I wanted to see some numbers around what does this look like, to Gary's point, from a dollar perspective, from a market opportunity perspective for me as a VC. Are you going in North America first? Like, what is the penetration strategy in different markets that would use this product?
Yes, and I agree. Well, as you know, from the fact that I filed a patent cooperation treaty, I'm not only going to be domestic, but I'm going to be international as well, too.
Yeah. So if I could just say one thing about, for all the people as well, like on that slide, there were like so many numbers, so many concepts and words. Like, just give me the number as an investor. Just give me the number. This is a $10 billion market, because like you want me to remember certain concepts, and what you want me to remember are the numbers that are ultimately going to make me really rich. I think like when you're doing an investor pitch, remember, that's what I'm trying to figure out. How do I make a lot of money out of this? And the details are just to aid to that point. But a lot of times founders are telling me so many stories, but they're not telling me how do I get rich as an investor out of this. So that's the last thing I'd say.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for the feedback.
No, great job.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Janice. And with that, we're moving on to Kanji Anthony. Excuse me. Kanji Anthony from Udall.
Okay, I am sharing my screen. Okay, thanks so much. I'm Kanji Anthony, the CEO and co-founder of Udall, helping locals locate in-stock products. Just think about the frustration you felt, out of stock, in stock, we all hear it. Think about the frustration you felt the last time you could not wait for Amazon to deliver that product and you need it now. Well, retailers and consumers share a common problem. Retailers are losing almost $2 trillion annually when an item is out of stock or they have to slash prices for overstocked products. And then we did a survey and we learned that shoppers lose 6 days out of their year searching for products. It's a mundane task, right? And stressful. And they're also losing $57 billion in gas money. We all hate that gas money thing. When they drive somewhere and then the product's not there on the shelf. So Udl has created the solution, a 3D product search. What we have combined in our search is data from local and national retailers that shows when products are in stock. We combine that with a user's zip code and then also our current 34,000 Memphis online community where people actually share product sightings with one another. So we put that in the Udl engine and the results show you where products are located in stock near you right now in real time. Our target market, the sandwich generation. Women sandwiched between caring for aging parents and their children have no time to shop. They need it now. And they control $590 billion of this $1.7 trillion problem. Our team, myself, I have 190 million Google and online engagements. I'm also a 28-year TV media newscaster who left my 28-year company business to do this when we got all this traction. And we have a combined 50 years of entrepreneurial expertise, and let's just say 35 years combined of tech and media. Okay, so how do we make money? Ads on the platform. Retailers can showcase their products in our marketplace. There's a finder's fee for us to connect the retailers and consumers that the retailers pay. And then we have a lot of data and we can share behavioral insights with retailers so they can make better decisions. What makes us totally different than any other company doing this is that we have a thriving online community and they're highly engaged and they're local, so that makes them have trust. So right now we have a 34,000 member social online community. We have a trademark that went through. We have raised $425,000. We built the search and in just a 2-month period have 120,000 engagements. We just built it in for Memphis. However, organically, without spending a dollar, it randomly started to track across the country. So we now are finding in our top 10 cities that like Nashville, Atlanta, Dallas, somehow started using this because they found this need. We're raising $1.8 million. This will add more local and national retailers. We augment our online community and expand nationally and internationally. We, as I mentioned, we've raised $425,000. We break even year 2 as we continue to grow our subscription shoppers and ad money, and we build out the phases of our platform. And we're looking at year 5, multi-million-dollar in income. Now that people are hyper-focused on the time that they're losing on the supply chain, we didn't know until the pandemic hit us. And it causes stress. It causes a loss of time with your loved ones. Just Udl it. Let us do the searching for you so you can spend time, which is the one thing we can't get back, right? Spend your time doing the things you love. Let us do that for you. And we ask investors to help us to rebuild the backbone of America, and that is our local businesses. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Conchi. Great pitch. I wanted to turn it over to Gary first, if you'd like to give some commentary.
Okay, Gary, I'm ready for you.
No, okay, sorry.
You're not gonna hold back. Just bring it. And,
Oh yeah, bring it. No, I mean, so first of all, again, like I think all the pitches, like great energy, all of that. So I'm gonna start with that. And in your case as well, great traction, right? So I think like this was the first pitch where I've actually heard user numbers and kind of something that looks like momentum. Because remember, when you look at it, like I think it's like fewer than like or less than 1% of startups actually get funding. So investors are really looking for companies that seem to be onto something. The next, they have like that TikTok type growth or whatever, and you're giving that. So I think like that's the key to your whole pitch. In terms of its strength, right? The fact that, well, the users seem to like it. I'm not entirely sure why they like it. I think that's where it falls apart a little bit for me, because I think that when you talk about the sort of consumer that needs something now and can't wait for Amazon next day delivery, like I'm going to step back a bit. A lot of people would think that the current trend is that like we're going to go towards more e-commerce, right? So you're actually doing something that seems like counter-cyclical, counter-trend, right? You're saying, no, Amazon's not going to own this entire space. Like there's still this big niche out there of something that you can't wait until tomorrow to get. The thing is, you never tell me what that is. So in my head, I'm like, okay, so what is that? Is it groceries? Well, if they do have same day grocery delivery. So I'm trying to figure out, and then I'm trying to figure out how big is that space? How many people really do have something that they can't wait till tomorrow to get? Sorry, can we ask someone to turn yeah, thanks. So I think like that was where I started to lose it, because I was like, I'm trying to visualize the problem, but I couldn't because you didn't give me an example, which would be easy. Give me an example of one of the 30,000+ users, the fact that it's spreading. I'm trying to figure out like, okay, maybe I don't have that problem, but someone does.
Robitussin right now.
Sorry?
Adderall. I'm like Robitussin and Adderall right now.
So then
Anyway.
it seems like you're talking about, no, but it seems like you're talking then about more medicinal stuff, right? But then just say, but I mean,
you're right, groceries. So yeah, no, I'm
so
learning.
Yeah, so just help us to kind of visualize. Okay, so you're talking about, because the next thing people say in terms of go-to-market or product, whatever, is like, are there particular verticals that you're going after first? And then we find out in the Q&A, yes, there are. But it'll be better if you just make that clear from the very beginning. I think, because I want to give Tanaka more time than I've done in the past, other thing I would say is, I think you talk about 3D product search and all this kind of stuff. Remember that you do have competitors out there. You never really talk about the competition, where like for a moment, Amazon was like thinking about drone technology to do faster deliveries. Because remember, this is the fundamental problem for Amazon. At the beginning, they did not have next day delivery or even same day delivery, but they understand that consumers want everything now. So you're going to be going up against Amazon. You have to really give us a really great sense as to why this is a niche that they can't come and dominate, because they have all the money. You don't. They have all the technology. You still have to build it probably. So we just need a clearer sense as to like, is this something that Amazon can't go after, or something that they won't go after? They went after groceries. They bought Whole Foods, So they, again, kind of have a very voracious appetite when it comes to owning the entire category. What is it that you're seeing that they're not seeing? What is it that you're doing that they couldn't do? Help us to understand that. And I think related to that, then you start talking about 3D product search, but I couldn't really get why I need 3D. I just need it now. Do I need a 3D product search of Robitussin? I got a little bit lost there. And then and then you talk about the sandwich generation, but then is it the sandwich generation, or is it people who need medicines and groceries? I don't know. So there seemed to be like some difficulty for me to really understand who this persona of the user is, because a lot of mothers probably buying like, clothes that can wait. They're buying a lot of stuff on Amazon now. So again, more specificity. When you get to the team, you say you're an ex-TV anchor. Obviously, you know how to talk and all that kind of stuff. The real question people are going to ask is, who has retail experience? Who has e-commerce experience? Because the thing is, like, to the questions that I'm answering, someone might say, Gary, you're so stupid. Like, actually, when you know the space really well, what we're seeing is X. But right now, I don't know it, but it doesn't seem that you're telling me that someone on your team is a person to whom I should defer because they have that 10, 15 years of domain expertise. Business model being advertising, be really careful with that, because advertising usually only works when you have loads of users on the platform. And so that basically suggests then that you won't have any money until you have way more users, unless you're telling me that people are willing to pay more than they're currently willing to pay for these sorts of like Facebook and other ads, which kind of, are more a volume play than a kind of like small number play. And then you said the differentiation was that you have a thriving community. Why is that a differentiation? I mean, I don't know. It doesn't seem like narrowly tailored to the problem enough for me. So that was kind of like my feedback. So in general, congratulations on the traction, great presentation. But I think that you need to help us understand more of the problem. And yeah, then you said you're raising 1.8 million to increase the national retailers. Yeah, again, I kind of got lost when it came to the numbers. And I would say in general, it felt like when you were talking about the numbers, like you didn't have confidence in it, right? You're like, so we're gonna hit break even in year 2, and in year 5, we're gonna have multi-million-dollar income. Now, I'm gonna repeat what I said to the last person. The whole point is I'm trying to figure out how much money I can make. I don't want to know multi-million-dollar income. I'm trying to figure out, so year 2, it's gonna be 5, year 3, it's gonna be 15 or 20. I want to see that it's gonna grow really rapidly because you're onto something that looks viral or somehow kind of really contagious. So give me numbers and show me that you have dominion over the numbers. When you say stuff like multi-million-dollar income, it makes it feel like it's almost like an afterthought, which is obviously not what an investor wants to hear.
Yeah, and I'll confess that the I blanked and and I'll never do that again. Your pictures were over the number and I was like, oh my gosh, why am I blanking on this? But no, everything you're saying is great. And I have some slides I can rearrange that I have the answer, like, like Amazon spent $1.5 billion to shorten the time for deliveries, but they're failing at it and they're pulling money out of Whole Foods. And if for some reason they don't understand community and they've been trying and trying and trying, Google tried and they had to. So do you just like poo-poo on the competition, just like say really bad things?
No, because the thing is, like, Amazon is a really great company, right? So the thing is,
be a partner, like we see that.
But I think the thing that you want to, like, so I'll give you an example. Do you use Waze?
Of course, it's my life.
When I went, like, about 10 years ago, I went to Israel and I was talking to the founders of Waze, and they're like, we're better than Google Maps. And I was like, why? They're like, we're going to beat them. I'm like, why? They're like, because we're better. And here's how. Like, I think that in those cases, you don't want to poo-poo on a competition, especially when it's like a $1 trillion company with infinite resources. You have to explain, like, what's the insight here that you can do better than they can ever do. Like, I think, and it requires a lot of, like, almost like confidence to be able to do it, but there has to be something that is really special. And I think that's what investors are looking for. That's something that no one else is seeing.
And so you think if I have to say that women make 86% of consumer purchases, like I have to say that.
I think you have to help me understand, why is it that Amazon can't solve this problem, but you can?
Okay.
Because otherwise I'll just invest in Amazon stocks. Right? They're more likely to give me a return. Sorry, Tanaka, I said I was going to give you more time, but sorry, go ahead, Tanaka.
No, it was me.
No, you're absolutely fine. I just have one comment. I think as you were going through the pitch, Kanji, one thing that I was thinking about is, what is the user journey for this particular product? Like, do I start my shopping experience in Udall, or do I shop it in an Amazon, in another grocery platform? And then if I can't find the product, do I then go to Udall? So these are the questions that I had, and the more that you can do to clarify for me and others how I get to you, that would be great. Because what I ended up doing is I went to the website to learn more about your story, and then understood it kind of was born out of the pandemic, which had me, kind of asking questions around what has growth looked like post, right? If we were to think of us in a post-pandemic world, what has growth looked like post-pandemic? Have you been able to sustain these figures? These are questions I would have in a deeper dive discussion, but I think for the purposes of the pitch that you gave, excellent. But the more you can do, I think, to personalize the use case of the product through a story, that would be helpful, because you do that really well on the website. But I think in the pitch you had, okay, retailers and shoppers, and it became this gigantic macro discussion, as opposed to how do you solve a pain point that a consumer or retailer has in a very specific way. So I'd encourage you to inject a story there to make it real. And then also kind of talk about, the elephant in the room, which is what has happened from 2020 to 2023.
Sorry, can I just jump in? I know we're over time, but just like one very concrete tip. Like, imagine you told a story this way, right? I want to introduce you to Patricia. She's one of our 34,000 customers. She used to use Amazon, but she was finding that it took too long, it was too expensive, and something else. So then she found us, and then her life got so much better. And here you explain to me really clearly why. And like her, there are 50 million other people like her. And this is, So something like that, But I think like to Tanaka's point, like I really want to understand why Patricia has this problem. Because especially when it's a consumer facing product, if I don't understand why Patricia has the problem, the rest of the pitch is almost irrelevant. I won't believe you're going to get to break even ever, because I still don't understand why anyone's ever going to use it. So I think like you have to make sure that you double down on that.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Kanji. And with that, we're moving on to our fourth founder, Anna Marie Torres from Lobby.
Hi, thank you. Let me share my screen real quick. I'm sorry. Send here. Can everyone see it? Yes? Okay. So good afternoon. My name is Anna Marie Torres with Lovi, a loyalty reward system exclusively for local businesses. As a local business owner, you post somewhat regularly on social media, but you don't have any other digital marketing tools to communicate constantly with your customers. You also struggle with cash flow, not having a solid marketing plan, and time management. Now, on the other hand, as a customer, you either have your go-to places, you do a Google search, or you remember a promo that you saw received on your phone from a business that will help on your decision-making process. The main problem, local businesses do not have all the multi-channel communication tools to stay in the mind of the consumer.
Recording in progress.
Our solution, the loyalty reward system, provides digital loyalty cards, digital coupons, emails, and text messages working in a system for local businesses to collect data and to improve the communication. Because you don't know every single customer's digital love language, let's use them all. My why. Experts say that it has never been easier to start a business, but it has also never been harder to maintain one. The winners have been doing a really good job with digital marketing. With my experience, I want to help close the gap between digital marketing tools and physical locations. I have been seeing families like running businesses, paying staff, and having empty spaces. Local businesses comprise more than 95% of businesses in the US. Lobby will work towards 3% of the market in 5 years, starting with the food, personal care, and retail industries, bringing that to the numbers in the 3% will be like 10.8 million in 5 years. Our main competitors are the POS systems that offer some sort of marketing features as add-ons, but they rely on the business for the setups and utilization. Also, the main component, it's based on points per dollar spent instead of stamps. That might be also a turnoff for some of the customers. We offer both options. All those digital marketing tools customized for the brand, plus our knowledge and experience, and we set it up for automation, saving time, for each of the businesses. As you can see, all these digital marketing tools, they will bring customers back, boosting customer retention and increasing profits by 25 to 95%. Again, all the different digital marketing tools. These are some of the things or the examples that we do, including the loyalty cards, digital coupons, designing the QR code for the location, content of calendar for the month. And then using AI technology, we can create email campaigns, text messages, social media posts, and even a script, for them to prompt customers to join. Our business model, it's a subscription-based revenue model, and we have 3 systems available, each with different features. Obviously, the starter one is the one that we're focusing on right now. That includes the loyalty cards, the coupons, emails, and text messages. We currently have 3 local businesses on board in our platform. We're working on 7 more setups, and we have a strong pipeline of leads. In the past 2 weeks, I have also joined 2 Chamber of Commerce to continue the networking process that I've come to learn that is a really important, like building the trust within the B2B sector, especially within this type of local businesses. Our growth strategy includes more than 3.5 thousand active users by the end of year 3, and around 72 local businesses sign up. But we want to grow more like the brand and support local in all aspects. We want to create digital directories of coupons per city and monetize it with customers paying a low monthly fee to have access to all the discounts. We want to create discounted ticket package for local attractions on a resale group discount revenue model like City Pass style, but focusing on local attractions, not the big touristy attractions. And then exclusive merch for local businesses.
I am a former business owner with an MBA in marketing, and I want to build a team of like-minded people. I am in early talks with the tech partner to build a platform that supports all the tools in one place. Right now, I'm using tools that are available, but putting them together in a system to make it work for local businesses. So I want to build that platform, putting everything together. I'm also working with a graphic designer to add our loyalty reward system to her offerings, and that's something that could grow into like adding to other type of graphic designers, adding what we do to their offerings. And then I am also using freelancers, you know, for content creation and other tasks. So join my mission. I think we all know at least one local business owner that could benefit from the loyalty reward system. So I'm looking to connect with that business owner for them to sign up for the 30-day free trial. Help me also connect with like cities or Chamber of Commerce that would benefit from creating this digital directory of local businesses, $25,000 to build the platform and put everything together. And I'm looking also for mentors. Like if you think you can help me take this to the next level, so let's connect. I want to learn from you. So thank you for your time and help me support local with Lovi.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna Marie, for the pitch on Lovi. Gary, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, no, so this reminds me, so great pitch. It reminded me something I want to say about the first pitch, and I'll say it about this one as well. I've actually invested in a company that's in this space, right? That kind of was like a digital point of sale that had like a kind of loyalty component to it. And I've also invested in a tool 11 years ago, focusing on helping musicians to like work together, even if they're in different countries, right? I think the thing you have to think about is when someone's listening to your pitch, especially if it's an investor pitch, they're trying to figure out like what's new. Because usually if you've been around the game long enough, the problems that people are trying to solve are relatively similar. Like people are trying to figure out like how to help small businesses. That's one of the biggest ones that people are trying to solve. I think what's missing from the pitch though is any acknowledgement of those other efforts and an effort to try to understand, again, what it is that you can do better. Because it's not to say that every solution is perfect, but we've had Groupon trying to solve this issue. Then we had after Groupon people focusing on very particular niches. So you have people trying to solve it for salon workers, for massage workers, for you have Thumbtack essentially trying to do the same thing for freelancers, right? And artisans. You have restaurants, you have Grubhub, you have DoorDash. Some of these are billion-dollar businesses focusing on very particular niches of small businesses. And it seems like in your pitch, I'm not really getting clear what it is that you think that they're doing wrong. If you said to me, as some other pitches say, oh, well, yeah, there are all these other companies that are essentially becoming the outsourced marketing tools for small businesses, but they take too high of a commission, right? Then that would be kind of a problem. But as it is now, the problem as you're stating is just too general, which is that small businesses need help with marketing. Yeah, but they have like digital solutions out there. What's wrong with the digital solutions? There are obviously problems, but you're not getting to that level of specificity for me, which then means it's really difficult to engage with the pitch. I think the other thing is, even though you're early stage, try not to use future tense language, right? So you're saying like, we will do this, it's going to, which then only adds further to the sensation that it still is not something real. Right. So I'm thinking, okay, this is sort of company that needs to go to like a pre-accelerator. It's still only pretty much an idea and she's still working it out. She still hasn't done the market research to understand or to at least convey to me who else is trying to do this, because everyone else is trying to do this. Google is trying to do this to a certain extent. That's exactly the point of Google Local. Foursquare tried to do this. Like there have been loads of companies that have tried to do this before. What is it that they're not doing that you can do better? And I think that's a part that doesn't really come through for me in the pitch. So I think obviously a really big pain point, what I'm not really getting a clear sense as to is like, how does it work? A loyalty program online, well, that's kind of been done, it's being done. All of these other things being done. What is it that's new here? I think that we're not really getting that. And then how does it work, right? Even if it's still only kind of like a mock-up, or it's an idea, at least share with me your vision as to how the product would work such that I can believe that the small business owner that now has Groupon or Thumbtack or whatever it is that they have as the different options, that they're going to be like, okay, but those are garbage. This is like the Samsung, this is like the BlackBerry after seeing the iPhone. Like, what is it about you that is iPhone-like, at least back in 2008? I'm not really getting a clear enough sense. And then lastly, I think to the extent that you're pitching it to venture audiences, I think I took notes and I don't know if I always get them correct, but I think at one point you said we're trying to get to 2,500 active users and 73 customers signed up by year 3, right? I think you said something like that. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Like,
No, yes, oh, yeah.
yeah, if it's a venture backable business, we're trying to figure out how you get to like $1 billion valuation in the next like 5 to 10 years, right? So if your growth ambitions are that kind of like, let's say modest, then people are going to say, so if I give you $1 million, by the way, you don't have an ask in your pitch, which is then really difficult as an investor to understand, well, what do you want from me? Like, okay, that was a great pitch, but like, what's the ask? Like, I put in $1 million, I get back 10 million. I put $1 million, I get back 100 million. That's really what I'm trying to figure out relatively quickly, right? And so without kind of any of that in the pitch, it's then difficult to think about it as an investor pitch, or a pitch to an investor, I should say. But then, especially if you say to me, you're only going after 23 companies in 3 years or 70 or whatever the number was, then it's just kind of like, okay, that would just wipe you out of the consideration from the beginning. So if you're gonna do this, you know, if you're gonna do it as a kind of like nonprofit or as a small business, go ahead, right? Like there are loads of businesses out there that make loads of money without ever having to go into venture, and venture is not necessarily always the best option for everyone. But if you are going to pitch it to venture, someone like Techstars, then you have to take into account that we're looking for a very particular type of business that grows really quickly so that we can make a lot of money really quickly. And right now we're not seeing how you become even the DoorDash or Grubhub of a particular space. Does it make sense?
Yes, thank you, and I appreciate all the feedback. So I just want to confirm, so it's not clear because I know there's a lot of different options, but what I'm trying to do is like kind of a marketing in a box type of thing, like having all the tools in one place instead of, because if you like search for all the different options, it's usually like, or like either email campaigns or text messages, like kind of different companies providing specific services, but it's like putting everything together, including the loyalty cards, the digital coupons, everything together in an automation process for them.
So I think like sometimes people pitch like more is more, and sometimes I usually believe less is more. Facebook and Google are really efficient in terms of generating ads. I have friends who, you know, they're doctors, and I'm like, they're like, oh, I'm going to put it in a medical journal. I'm like, have you tried a Facebook ad and do a $25 kind of campaign? Like, oh my God, I got some leads. So the point is that like, you know, Facebook and Google operate to kind of specifically focus on small businesses that need to generate leads quickly. If you're going to like, you have to tell me why those aren't right, or why there's a particular subset of companies that Google and Facebook don't really work for, because they're pretty efficient in terms of digital tools, right? Maybe it's an Amazon because it's a particular type of tool. Okay, that's another thing. But like, I think you can't just say like, oh, well, I'm gonna put all of these coupons. I mean, there are companies that are only coupon companies, digital coupon companies. There are companies that are point of sale companies for small businesses, for restaurants, and for coffee shops. People get like super specific, but then they say, okay, but I know that because I go deeper into the vertical, then that means that I have some amount of an entry barrier, because Facebook and Google aren't going to go that specific for these sorts of businesses. But you're not giving me that. You're trying to be everything to everyone without like explaining to me why the existing solutions aren't good enough. And usually the way people think about startups is that like, if the existing solutions are more or less okay, you might not need to exist unless you do something that is exponentially better than what they're doing. So if you're going to create another phone, make it be an iPhone, not like a better BlackBerry. That would be the kind of idea here. And so the question is, what is that ambition to create something that really is disruptive, 10 times better than the existing solutions, such that when a user has to think about, well, do I continue with the incumbent that I've been using that has a very strong brand and I've been working with them for like the last year? They say, no, actually, I'm going to switch over to her because this is just way better than what they're doing. Again, this is only if you want to do a venture backable company. If you want to do a small business consultancy type thing, ignore everything I just said.
I appreciate that.
Malka,
Thank
is
you.
there anything else you want to add?
No, so I think Gary covered every single bit of feedback. The one thing that I was going to say is to be very careful as you're thinking about where you're positioned in the competitive landscape, because I think for Lovey, that is the main point, right? Like, where are you with respect to competitors? Are you better? And I think once we got to the competitor slide, because that was top of mind as you were going through, I was thinking, okay, well, they're existing solutions. When we got to the competitor slide, the comparison with the competitors was essentially a feature set comparison. And I always caution against that, because you know, if your competitor comes in and starts doing text messaging and, you know, another feature, you're out of business. So the more that you can do to show your differentiation outside of features that can easily be introduced by our competitors, the better it will be for you. And then more from like an optics perspective, the slides, these seem a little busy, but maybe this is just my preference for less animation from a slide deck perspective, but just to make sure that's like really clean, that, you know, we're focusing on you, number one, and less on like the transitions between slides, the better it will be for you, because oftentimes you will send over the slide deck and we want to be easy to read through as opposed to like pausing and going through the animations, just more from like a technical perspective, that feedback. And then my last piece of feedback was around the raise. You said you were raising 25K to build the platform. I was very, very curious to know who would be building this for 25K, because it does seem on the lower end, but would love to chat on that more to see, you know, what you were thinking there. And yeah, because I think to Gary's point, we would, if you are going after like venture funding, we are expecting to see numbers that align with like build for a platform of this nature, and scale for a platform that will become a $1 billion business.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna Marie. And with that, last but not least, is Darshay Ham with Melix.
Hello, everyone. My name is Darshay, and I am the co-founder and CEO of Melix World, where we are focused on leaving no business left behind. I want you guys to think of your Blockbusters, your Sears, and many other prominent brands of yesterday that died because they couldn't connect with the next generation of consumers. Now, fast forward, today, brands are in a very similar position as they must be able to connect with Gen Z shoppers in order to survive. However, these consumers are different. They expect customer experiences to be very unique. They expect to be able to feel, touch, and connect with their favorite brands in a way like never before. Unfortunately, though, brands of today, websites of today limit brands' ability to connect with their online consumers in a very unique way. That's why we created Melix World, where we have now given brands the ability to bring their brand experience to life through our virtual reality commerce app builder. Brands now have the capability to build out immersive shopping experiences that will allow them to then deploy them into the Oculus store using no code at all. Our platform is very simple and easy to use. You would choose a floor plan. That floor plan is easily customizable by way of our drag and drop feature. It integrates easily with your e-commerce platform, and you can upload your products into the experience, and then it has easy checkout process for all of your consumers. And most importantly, you can take what you've built here, the experience you own, and seamlessly deploy it into the Oculus store. Now, there actually isn't a current shopping category inside of the Oculus store. So by brands using our VR commerce app builder, we are now allowing them to enter into a new omni-channel where they can reach an entirely new audience. So we're proving the point even more, knowing that big tech is betting on VR as well, and they are fully aware of the $140 billion spending power that Gen Zers do actually have. Now, we currently charge a monthly SaaS of $99 a month, and we take 1% of sales transactions. Our go-to-market strategy is very simple. We are working with Shopify Plus members, and we're becoming a Shopify marketplace app. And the second thing that we're doing is we're attending retail trade shows to allow for brands to be able to see how they can build these seamless experiences in real life. Now, right now, we have already completed our MVP. We are patent pending, and we're working towards getting a beta together so that we can begin testing our product. The way we differentiate against our competitors is that our platform is using no code at all, and we're saving brands millions of dollars in design, development, and maintenance on their VR commerce app. Now, as far as team, there's no better team than us. We have prior experience. I have prior experience building one of the largest Black-owned marketplaces where we did over tens of thousands of revenue, onboarded 600 plus business owners, and we have a very, very technical team, and we've been involved in many accelerators and incubators. Now, we're currently raising $1 million in a pre-seed round, which will give us about 24 months in runway and get us to 100 customers and 10 million in recurring revenue. Our vision for VR is not tied to NFTs. It's not tied to digital products. We're utilizing virtual reality to create a new omni-channel for brands to be able to showcase their brand in an all new way and bringing together two worlds that were once separate. This is opening up opportunities for brands and customers to connect in a way like never before. So we appreciate your time today, and we want you guys to partner with us in ensuring that as we enter into the next iteration of the internet, that brands are not being left behind. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Deshay. That was very energetic. Really appreciated that, and great pitch. I'll turn it over to Gary first for comments.
Yeah, no, so I definitely love the energy of the pitch. I mean, towards the end, like I just typed in a search in Google, metaverse retail, and like there's an article in Forbes, why brands are rushing to have a metaverse presence. Now, of course, this was like in 2022. I think in 2023, it's probably a very different situation, as a lot of companies are getting rid of people and going back to their core businesses, Facebook included. I think, so the first thing I would try to figure out if I were you is like, crypto and metaverse and all that kind of stuff, they were really hot like a year ago, not so hot now, and a lot of investors are basically saying there's been a lot of money spent and we're not really sure like what's been generated from a kind of user point of view, like in terms of stickiness. So I think you have to start with that point of view. Like a year ago, people have said, why now? Gary, that's a dumb question. Why now? Because the metaverse is hot. You have the reverse problem now. The metaverse is not hot, but you're still pitching it like we're still in 2022. And most investors are not going to be convinced that they're wrong simply because you pitch it like this. I think you have to acknowledge reality as a starting point. I think the second thing that I would say is it's unclear to me, like just going back to that, I don't use the metaverse at all. And I think that's been the problem with virtual reality, is that no one's been using it. The technology has been around for a long time and no one uses it. Customer adoption is the big problem. I guess Google and Facebook were assuming they're spending a lot of money and that the technology would be better because the glasses could be seamless. Maybe we can have contact lenses, something else that means that we could have a better experience. That's still not playing out now. So I guess my question is, there are loads of other folks that are trying to create retail experiences that are more immersive. What makes you special? There's nothing. You said that it's patent pending. And I was like, well, what's the patent on? Because yeah, loads of other folks are trying to create these immersive retail experiences. I'm sure that Amazon must be trying to think about an immersive retail experience. I've seen in-store brands trying to think about how they can create more immersive experiences, particularly as fewer people actually want to go to the retail store, right? So I think they have been thinking about how to create these other sorts of experiences. You're seeing a lot of like big brands shutting down or closing down stores because everything is moving online. So that's already happening. What is it that you're bringing to the table that's kind of completely unique? And then I think the last thing is when you went through your team, you just kind of like, again, you can tell when someone is trying to like flub it. And you know, like if you said to me, I'm like, well, I'm Gary, this is what I've done. And here's what's really relevant to this domain. It felt like you were just trying to like, again, convince us, but it didn't seem like you were convinced. Like, we have a great team, we have, technical experience, but it felt so general that it felt like not real, So what people would say is, okay, even when you were saying we have the largest Black owned with a few thousand customers, whatever, people would say that's not the biggest. I think you said at one point you said one of the best. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is own what your skill sets are and just be honest with them. And then, you can just say, hey, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've already done a business like this before, focusing on Black-owned businesses. We got to X in revenue. That's already enough. I don't think you have to try and oversell it, particularly if you're not then going to kind of back it up with the numbers. So I think like those would be my 3 points. Like, you obviously are in a space that is interesting. You seem like a really energetic and great founder. I think the story that you're telling has to be updated for 2023, and it has to be updated in a way that actually reflects the competitive landscape in a way that you're not doing currently. Does it make sense?
Oh yeah, I definitely, and like I said at the end, I think that the reason why metaverse is not popular is because everybody wanted it to be focused on digital products and NFTs, and as we see, there's no relevance there. And so the reason why we're focused on the merchants, we're bringing the aspect of these are your real products that you sell in real life, and you're bringing these real life experiences into this virtual reality, like, you know, world, so that people can grasp what's actually happening in real life and connect what's happening in online together. And so I think that that's the biggest thing that we're focusing on. We're going to the brands themselves and giving them the power to not just have like
I would say I've seen stuff like that before. I think like where you can start to become really more interesting is when you say, but there are particular verticals that we think. So, I mean, if Louis Vuitton did an immersive experience or the luxury sector did an immersive experience, maybe that is something that's cool, but maybe they don't want to do that because being on Fifth Avenue is still kind of really cool for a lot of people. So they don't have to worry. Like, what are the target segments where you think that this actually holds the truest? Like, help us understand that with more specificity.
Right. Gotcha. And I just wanted to make one more comment. I also, the competitors right now, the biggest thing is that this is going to grow to be a big market, right, in the future. We may not be here now, but we're going to head there. And it just hasn't sped up with that time. And I think the biggest thing is that people are creating experiences that have no interoperability and no uses. And so you can't actually put it into an Oculus store because it's not created that way. And so our software allows them to actually put it into the Oculus store. It's an app that they built and they put it into the Oculus store. So now people who own an Oculus headset can use can see the experience.
The real problem is how many people own an Oculus headset.
Yeah, you're right. I ain't gonna lie, you're right.
That's the problem. It's like,
you're right. Yeah. So we gotta get there. We ain't there. You're right. You're right. You on the money. I ain't gonna lie. It's only about a million of them. If Facebook want to be honest, it's only about a million.
Natalia says she does. Okay, cool.
Awesome. Sounds like Natalia owns an Oculus headset. That's awesome. I don't have too many comments, actually. I think similar to Gary, love the energy from the pitch. I think what works well for you is this hammering into this point of creating a new market category, right? And I think you state that a couple of times, because that's really where people are going to get excited for this type of product, given the hesitations that we've seen in the past. So I think the more you can do to show that this is something of the future that people can tap into now, the better that works out for you. But also, I think to the point of, answering some of Gary's concerns is, why hasn't it worked beyond people not buying Oculus, right? Do people actually want to shop in this way? And what kind of shopping experience is this? Is an experience that I have in store? Is an experience that I have at home when I'm thinking about what to purchase? Kind of, defining that user journey a little bit more will help you differentiate yourself as well. Because, I always say, you are a solution, right? Amongst many solutions who are doing similar things. It's not like the first product of this nature to be built. So the more you can give me insight into what is your competitive advantage or some insight that you have that the competitors don't around why this can be viable, because it's been tried and it still has not had the uptake that we would want at this stage, right? So what are the barriers? I think, you mentioning that it's, a no-code platform in terms of reducing, that barrier to entry for an app developer is critical and key, but more so speaking to the downstream effects, because you can build it. You can make it easy for the application developer to build, but if they still have no market, there's still a problem there. So the more you can give insight into what does the downstream market look like, how would they use it, in what capacity, in what arena, what use cases make sense, and really start with a small use case before going into this is going to be adapted by all sorts of stores. To Gary's point, what are the verticals? Really starting from a small use case and focusing on that as your entry point, because you've seen there's been big adoption or more interest in a particular space. And then you can talk about, the future, the category defining nature of the product.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this was fun. And thank you all
Yes.
who watched today. I know, yeah, it takes a lot to come into, you know, a group session and kind of lay yourself bare in this way. So thank you for sharing with us, allowing us to learn more about what you're building, and excited to continue the conversation as well.
Yes, definitely. Thank you
I'm
so
adding
much
your
to
email.
the founders.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying I'm adding Tanaka's email in just in case anyone wants to get in touch with us about following up or further pitching opportunities.
Great. Well, thank you to the founders who put themselves out there and pitched in front of an audience. Thank you to Tanaka and Gary for the constructive feedback, and then to everybody in the audience for also providing a safe space for them to pitch.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
See you guys
Have a good
next
evening.
time.
Congrats,
And
guys.
everyone.
Great job. Bye.
Thank
Thank you
y'all.
so much. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.